Well, I wanted, since I'm not doing a whole lot of riding right now, wanted to give maybe an idea of how I ended up with my Harley Davidson, my 13 Road King. Well, I started off, just a quick history as far as me riding motorcycles. I started off with my very first bike, a Honda CT70. And, I wanted, the friends had the YZs and all that. And we just didn't have the money. My dad didn't have the money to go out and get that, but he found this CT70 that he was able to fix, put a couple new tires on, and it worked. And I had the bike and rode it until it pretty much fell to pieces. I had a lot of fun on that bike. And then after that, of course, graduated up to a street legal bike. I had two brother-in-laws that had, I think, a Kawasaki 440 and a Honda 400. And so I started looking, found a bike in my price range. It was, I think, a 1980s Kawasaki 400, KZ 400. And I rode that with my two brother-in-laws for a little bit. And then I wanted something new, so I ended up getting a newer Honda 450 and rode that for a little while. They got the bug to get another one, so I got a Honda Shadow 500. So after I had the Honda Shadow 500. That was a drive shaft model. I had that probably a couple years, and after that, got married, had a couple kids, and I just never really had the opportunity to ride, so I sold that. And then I had a dry spell until a few years later. My nephew had wrecked on a Sportster Harley Davidson. It was actually an 87 XLH 1000. And he got paralyzed on his right arm, but everything else, was working and could move. And he ended up rebuilding that bike, and I bought that from him. So I had that for a couple years, and he had that, nice, it had drag pipes on it. It was loud, and he had it fixed up a little bit. So I had that for a couple years, but I still couldn't ride it because, we had a couple more kids, so we had 4 kids, and two of them always had sports, football, baseball, cheerleading, and I just never rode it, so I sold it. And then recently, I guess you could move 20 years or so later, I told the wife that the kids are gone now. I don't feel I can ride now. I don't have to necessarily worry about taking kids to sports and that kind of thing. So I went to the Harley Davidson. Actually, it's a larger Harley Davidson in the city over here in Richmond. And I went in there and I was walking around the bike. I really didn't have the idea I was going to buy a bike right then, but I kind of wanted to talk to somebody to really start getting my thoughts together. And so nobody came up to me. So with that being said, I left there, and I had a weld convention that I was attending in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So I had a few extra minutes one day during lunchtime in and out of talking to vendors. I went by the Harley Davidson shop, and a fella came up to me, and I told him that I was going to buy a bike in the near future. I said probably within the next 6 months. So, but that didn't distract him. He kept on, and he asked me a bunch of questions. And the biggest thing is that whatever bike I got, I didn't want to be sorry that I got it 4, 5, 6 months down the road. I am a larger fella, so A Sportster probably wasn't going to be in my cards, but I was possibly looking at maybe a Dyna. And so he recommended, he had a used bike. I told him I didn't want to spend the money for a new bike right now. So he had a 2013. He said it was the best deal on his lot. It probably was. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. But I went to look at it. It was a 13 Harley Road King. So I got on it, rode it around a little bit in the parking lot, and signed a deal, did the papers, and so I was renting a U-Haul to get it back home. So that's kind of how I ended up with my Harley Road King. It was kind of impulsive, but I do a lot of things impulsive. So it's been a few months, and I've put a couple thousand miles on it, and I will say this: it's a great riding bike so far. You know, I haven't test drove a whole lot of different kinds of bikes, but it rides good. It's got a good feel to it. Got a good sound to it. So, you know, I'm good for now. And I got a backrest on it, put a luggage rack so the wife can ride it, have something to, you know, have up against her back. So I'm satisfied with it. So that's kind of my story, how I ended up with my 13 Road King. And of course I joined, found a hog chapter to join, and I kind of went out in the country a little bit, out in Orange, Virginia, and a nice bunch of guys and ladies actually, and I've ridden with them a couple times, and it's been fun. I've enjoyed it. So we'll go to the hog chapter meeting. I guess it's the first Saturday of every month. So that's kind of my story so far, and I'll see you next time.